gotta say, I know this is the Alien Out of the Shadows episode, but Kenny, are you getting on board with Fireteam Elite?
I am. I got it not that long ago, like within the last month or two, and I played it a little bit when I first picked it up.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really wowed by it because like I was playing it solo and I wasn't very good at it and I didn't really like get it yet.
Sure.
But then I played it a little bit more and I actually played a couple of rounds with you.
Yeah.
And then after that, the game kind of clicked and I'm actually really enjoying it a lot now.
It's fun, isn't it? I didn't really jump into it until last weekend, and it's taken over all my free time, basically, which is already pretty limited.
I was playing D&D earlier today, and then afterwards, since we wrapped up a little early today, I was like, man, maybe I could sneak in another mission before we have to record. And then I was like, nah, I don't think I have time. And then like we're recording now, and I'm like, I'll probably have time to play some more after we're done recording today.
We got to get through this so that we can play more Fireteam Elite.
Yeah, I hear you.
I just want to say it's probably going to be a little bit before we talk about Fireteam Elite in any like in-depth way on the show, as well as its prequel novel, Alien Infiltrator, or Aliens Infiltrator, which I've been listening to for fun. What a fun, sleazy novel that is. I'm enjoying it.
So it's good then? It's worth a listen?
It's worth a listen. Yeah, I'm definitely going to talk about it on the show. But I like this story. I just want to say, listeners know I'm a little bit down on the Prometheus saga, right? And way too up on the Covenant part of it. Embarrassingly so, probably. I just want to say that I like the way that the franchise seems to be weaving in the pathogen and the engineer stuff into stories now. So like seeing all that engineer city stuff in Fireteam Elite was very fun. I like the story of Infiltrator, which involves them doing experiments, Weyland-Yutani doing experiments with the pathogen that they found on this planet. And I like it's working for me, right? Surrounding it by more familiar alien stuff is making it work for me.
I got you. All right.
I just want that on record because I don't think I have a reputation as a Prometheus hater, but like I was always kind of like, man, how much of this are they going to carry on in the series? And well, it seems like a significant amount, but I like the way they're carrying it into the series. That's all. Just want to say that about.
Fair enough.
About
Fair
it
enough.
all. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk about it more when we finally do our actual Fireteam episode, considering that now that the DLC expansion is out and that DLC is called Pathogen, we'll probably end up talking about Prometheus a whole lot during that episode.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil. I know you haven't cleared I haven't cleared all the missions either, but we kind of get into that stuff immediately in the base game also, like, well, not immediately, but before the base game is over, you'll be running into some of that stuff.
Yeah, I've already started seeing like the big stone Prometheus heads and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been talking about like doing experiments on pathogen and stuff. And so I assume at some point or another, like pathogen mutated enemies start showing up. And I haven't seen any of those yet, if there are any. But I'm already, like I said, I'm already seeing the big stone Prometheus heads and all that. And I'm like, yeah, I love these guys. I mean, even you can go back and listen to the Prometheus episode. I went on record right there in that episode that I love the big stone heads.
We love a big head. We love a big stone head in Prometheus and Covenant. There were some big stone heads in that too.
You're damn right there were.
We were all about it. But this week, we are talking about something different. We should probably introduce ourselves first. Mm-hmm. I am fossilized dog alien Neal.
And I am occasional lover Kenny.
And we are just a couple of rogue AI programs working our ways through the computer systems of the Alien franchise.
Love it. Flawless.
Did not have either of those on paper. Both of those just came to me just now.
Nice.
Yeah. And we, as you all know, broadcasting live from the USCSS podcast in the Zeta 2 Reticuli system. Mm-hmm. That's got to get beamed back to Earth before it gets distributed, but we do have the speakers pointed out the windows. We have left the wreckage of Sevastopol's station, but we found a new derelict. Well, we can see the wreckage of the derelict, right? That it's not really in orbit. Maybe there's some parts.
Yeah, it's kind of broken up mostly by this point.
Yeah, and kind of crashed into the planet below, which is planet LV-178. And records indicate that this was a mining vessel called the Marion.
It certainly did used to be that. Yes, there isn't much here anymore, but, something clearly happened.
Yeah, I'm going to force this we're on a spaceship narrative in every episode from now on.
Hey, man, that's part of the ongoing lore of the show. That's fine.
Maybe it'll build to something that's actually consequential in the future. We'll see.
Maybe.
We are talking Alien Out of the Shadows, the 2014 novel by Tim Lebbon, but we are talking two different versions of it.
Technically 3, although 2 of them are basically the same thing.
2 are the same. Kenny, you listened to the audiobook of Alien Out of the Shadows. Is that correct? And you read some of it. You read the actual book as well.
I listened to the audiobook, and then after I was done, I sat down with the ebook and then skimmed through that to take my notes.
Yeah, and that novel is like 9 hours long if you're listening.
I think it was like 9 hours and 23 minutes or something like that. Just a little over 9 hours, yeah.
Sure. And I listened to the fully produced Audible original audio drama performance of Alien Out of the Shadows, which is something like 4.5 hours.
Sounds about right.
And I really like this one. Now, I don't think the story and some of the stuff at the end is like super great, and I don't know that the thing they did with making sure a couple of main characters appear was necessarily required. But I've only listened to the audio drama, and I've listened to it a few times, and it is a very fun thing to listen to. It's a fun story. It's a fun movie for your ears, man, right? While you're at a job you hate, to be listening to that instead, or mowing the lawn or whatever. So I'm a big fan of this, but I can only speak of the audio drama version, and from what I understand, there are some differences, which we'll go over.
There sure are. Yep.
Yeah, which we'll go over kind of at the end. But for now, I guess I gave my general thoughts on my experience with this. Kenny, what did you think of this overall?
Well, how should I phrase this? I think the story overall, not like necessarily the actual plot. Like when I say the story, I just mean the book,
Sure.
Overall, I think it's pretty good. I think there are parts of it that are really good that I like genuinely really like a lot.
Yeah.
There's a couple of parts that I think are insanely stupid and bad and lame and were a like legitimately genuinely bad idea. And overall, though, I think this is another one of that classic line of entries in the Alien franchise where it is a spaceship filled with people, and then a xenomorph shows up and kills almost all of them, and then the story ends. And then also there's some like Wayland Yutani like style corporate espionage and backstabbing going on. So, like most of the stuff that happens in most of the entries in the franchise, it's just kind of another one of those,
Doesn't feel particularly original.
I mean, not any more so than anything else is. Yeah, I mean, it's a cool story and it's well written. Like, that's one thing I will say. Tim Lebbon, in my opinion, is a very good writer. And so I thought the book was written very well. Yeah. I just don't think that the story is the most creative or original thing I've ever seen in my life.
Sure. I get you. A little bit more info about this book. It is part of a trilogy called the Shadow Trilogy, but it's 3 novels that are not directly really connected to it. I mean, they are, but not really, but they are designed to connect to the events of the film series. So there is this one, Alien Out of the Shadows, then there is Alien Sea of Sorrows, and Alien River of Pain. 3 different authors for each of those books. We will be getting to the other 2 eventually. But is it River of Pain takes place prior to Aliens, excuse me.
Yes, River of Pain. I mean, it takes place in the same time frame this one does, i.e. between 1 and 2.
Right.
But River of Pain is like a direct prequel to Aliens.
Yes.
And takes place like the day before or something like that.
Sure. As the colony is getting overrun, it's basically the story of Hadley's Hope. And then Sea of Sorrows.
Yes.
That takes place like around Alien Resurrection. Is that correct? Like between Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection?
I think it takes place like after Resurrection.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. But Sea of Sorrows is like more directly a sequel to this book.
Right.
Like the three of them are a trilogy, but the second one isn't really like narratively connected that much to the other two.
Right.
But yeah, Sea of Sorrows is more or less like you could pretty easily draw a line and make the argument that it is a direct sequel to this story. But yeah, it takes place like several hundred years in
hundreds
the
of years in the future. Yeah, same planet.
Yeah.
2496 is that one. So this one takes place in a different year. This one takes place like 30 something years after Alien, I believe.
It's 37 years. I think it takes place 20 years before 2.
Gotcha.
So,
okay. Yeah, so this movie was really tied, Jesus Christ. This novel was really created to do a little side story between Alien and Aliens. And to do that, they decided that they needed to bring Ellen Ripley into the story, which I know a lot of you out there who have not read this book are scratching your heads. How does that work? Yeah. Don't worry, they make it work.
Well, I don't know that they do, but...
Yeah, we'll get to it.
They make the attempt. They do it whether it works or not. I'll put it that way.
Right. They do it whether it works or not. For the record, I think it works fine. Like, we'll get there. There's some grim implications, but I think it works fine.
Fair enough.
So do we want to just kind of go through and summarize this book? You know, not super in depth, but in depth enough that everybody understands what happened in it so that we can then highlight a few of our favorite parts.
Sure.
And our not so favorite parts.
And our not so favorite parts. There's going to be one or two of those as well. Yes.
Okay. So basically the story picks up with the deep space mining orbital, the Marion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a ship that is carrying mining crews to and from the planet LV-178, where they are mining the planet for a mineral called trimonite, which is the hardest material known to man.
Yeah, trimonite is basically, if you've read X-Men, it's adamantium. That's what it is.
It's unobtainium.
Yeah, pretty much.
So we've got the Marion, and it's got two ships that transport miners to and from. It's got the Samson and the Delilah. Is that about correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yes. It has 4 docking bays, I think.
Yep.
So the Marion is captained by Captain Jordan, Lucy Jordan, and we've got another cast of characters here. We've got Chief Engineer Chris Hooper, who is
the main character,
who they call Hoop. He is the main character. We've got the Science Officer Karen Snedden.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're all engineers, Baxter, Kazyanov, and LaChance.
No. They're not the ones that are engineers. The other engineers are Powell and Welford. They're the engineers. LaChance is the pilot. Baxter is the comms officer. Kazyanov is the ship's doctor, and Garcia is her sidekick, the medic. And then there is also a 10th character that has, I believe, 1 line and is only mentioned twice in the entire book. Security Officer Cornell.
Well, he dies pretty quick, right?
Him and Captain Jordan die in, like, the opening scene of the book.
Yeah. So the book opens up on the Marion. The story opens up on the Marion. Jordan and Hooper are like doing some engineer stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ships are coming in, right? The Samson and the Delilah are coming in, and they're getting like Mayday distress calls from the Delilah, I believe.
Correct, yes.
And they open up comms, and the fucking Delilah's been overrun with xenomorphs. There's one adult, I think, on it, and then a bunch of hatchlings, because all these facehuggers basically got on all the crew. And they decided that their best bet was to try to dock on the space station after this. On their way up, the pilot, what do they do? They start a plasma torch inside the thing, which is a bad idea, because somebody fires off a plasma torch and basically lights the alien on fire, but also lights a whole bunch of other people on fire. And then while the xenomorph is running around on fire, he basically ignites the entire inside of the ship. Yes.
And so the pilot dies, it loses control, and the Delilah on fire rams into the side of the Marion and explodes.
Yeah, this book is not fucking around. There was aliens right away.
Yeah.
Explodes, hits the thing. There's like bodies going everywhere. I think they mention a body is impaled on the communications antenna.
Yeah.
Like it's fucking nuts. And that explosion, is that what takes out Jordan and Cornell?
Yeah, Jordan and Cornell were on the way to the dock that the Delilah was aiming towards, but then since they didn't slow down and just exploded, it's assumed the two of them died in the explosion because neither of those characters ever appear again in the book. So
yeah, they're toast.
Who knows, honestly, but they probably did.
They're fucking floating out there in space, probably.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Samson... everyone on board the Samson has been rendered unconscious by facehuggers or already dead. I think they're all already dead, and all the xenomorphs have already hatched.
There is one guy still alive, the pilot of the Samson, even though like the Samson auto docks onto the Marion, but there's one guy that's still left alive, and it's never stated in the book why he was kept alive, although later he gets killed. But there's something, I believe 4 xenomorphs on the Samson.
Yes.
And it docks successfully without a problem to the Marion.
Yep.
But then they never open it up because they see all the xenomorphs in there. And so the xenomorphs just kind of like hunker down and just wait. And they're just kind of chilling.
I don't think the captain of the pilot for the Samson was mentioned in the audio drama. I think it was just an empty vessel or a alien-filled vessel with no living humans that docks on the Marion. I could be mistaken, but I don't think...
Well, that very well could be one of the differences between the book and the audio drama version. Yeah. Because I know for a fact that in the book, there was one guy still left alive.
Gotcha. So from there, the Marion has been knocked out of its orbit from the explosion, and they are, I think at this point, something like 90 days from entering the atmosphere of LV-178. When
right around there, give or take 90, something like that. Yeah,
I didn't keep track of this timeline because it changes rapidly due to other interference things. But they send out a distress beacon, and a shuttle picks up on it and broadcasts a signal back, and that signal is Ripley's last survivor of the Nostromo message, her own distress beacon. So they picked up the Narcissus, and the Narcissus has now recalibrated its trajectory and is going to auto-dock with the Marion.
Correct.
Yeah. So that happens, right?
It's Ripley, baby.
Ripley is now on the ship. They get her out of hypersleep. They get her in a Medpod. They give her a whole physical, check her over. They keep Jones locked in on the shuttle with food and a litter box and stuff, right?
Yep.
And Ripley's like, you guys aren't a rescue team? And Hooper is like, we kind of thought you were the rescue team. We're in deep shit.
Yeah, he basically says that you probably would be safer if you had just kept flying.
Right, but you auto-docked and we couldn't do anything about it, and you're stuck here now with us.
Yeah.
Sorry, bad luck, Ripley. Also, there's aliens, right?
Yeah, she freaks the fuck out when she finds out that there's xenomorphs on the Samson. She's like, oh god, it's happening again.
And they're setting up Sneddon, the science officer in this. They're setting her up to be kind of suspicious. And certainly Ripley has like major mistrust of the science officer because Sneddon has this curiosity about the xenomorphs that is definitely echoing Ash's curiosity when he's like experimenting on the facehugger and stuff. And it's another science officer. So Ripley is not a fan of Sneddon at this moment.
Also, I should say that how you mentioned you weren't exactly sure how the timeline happens there. Yeah. Basically, what happens is that after, everything is stabilized and they figure out what all needs to be done and figure out, the prioritized systems to take care of.
Yes.
There is a hard cut to 77 days later, it's Ripley in hypersleep having nightmares about xenomorphs, seconds before her tube opens and Hoop's like, how's it going?
Man.
So it's a 77-day cut, which is important because they said they had something like 90 days.
Yes.
And so she ends up showing up like a week and a half, 2 weeks.
Yeah, they got 2 weeks to
before
deal
their
with
ship
this.
is going to be broken apart. So yeah.
Okay. So in audio drama, we get chapter 1 where they find that the narcissist is headed towards them, and then chapter 2 is Ripley waking up, and she wakes up like kind of scrambled, get it off me, like she was having facehugger nightmares.
And turns out it was just Jones.
But I don't think they talk about the timeline. Yeah, it turns out it was just the cat.
Yeah, in the book they say, like, because basically what happens is at the end of like the first chapter or the prologue or whatever it is, they're like, oh man, we only have like 90 days. We need to start, planning stuff. And then the beginning of the next chapter is Ripley's nightmare. And then during the following conversation, we find out that there had been a hard 77-day time cut between those two scenes, because at the time we were not at that point told there was one, and only found out later about it. But that's where the time cut happens, is like the last thing that happens before we find out Ripley is there. That's where the cut is.
So now the gang is going to come up with a familiar plan, which is flee in the narcissist, take the shuttle, right? Alternate sleep cycles in the sleep pods, which in this they only say there's one, but I believe in the movie you can see that there are 2 in the narcissist.
There are 2.
Yeah.
And that's, I would say, a little bit more than a minor goof, because the fact that there is only one on the narcissist is a major plot point for this book, but that's whatever.
Yeah, but there's some other things too. Like, I'll just say this now. When you watch the beginning of Aliens, you see the grappling hook gun that Ripley used, like, still hanging out the door of the shuttle.
Yeah. Yep.
So if she docked on a space station, they opened the door and then they closed the door and relaunch it, like, that thing would have fallen off or come loose, or somebody would have picked it up or something, you'd think, right? So, like,
you'd think
there are a lot of reasons that this just doesn't fit the canon, but
yeah, like, I like this book and I think it's cool, but even though it was explicitly written for the express specific purpose of being canon to the movies, I don't know that it is. I don't know that it can be.
Yeah, you can nitpick any of this stuff, though. I mean,
but whatever. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like if you really grind in far enough, anything you look at, you could come up with a reason why it couldn't be canon. So it's not really that big of a deal. But
yeah, I mean, just think about all the alien acid blood that splatters all over everything and doesn't matter in Aliens, for instance.
Yeah, pretty much. As an example, yeah.
Yeah, but hey, that's just us being jerks about the movie Aliens, even though I really like it.
Pretty much.
All right, so they're gonna, like, okay, well, we got to take the shuttle, but for some reason we need a new power core for the shuttle. When does our rogue AI enter the picture? It's around this time. Is that correct?
I believe she figures it out. Yeah, okay. I think this spot in my notes is when it happens. Originally, Hoop's plan was to use the escape pods to go down to the mine on the surface and then post up there. But it's actually Snedden that comes up with the idea to use the Narcissus as a lifeboat and, like, swap out the people in the cryo tube and all that. And then Hoop and Ripley, who, like, kind of start to have a thing in this book.
Even though 77 days earlier, Hoop had a thing with Captain Jordan. Yeah.
The two of them go to the Narcissus, and while they're poking around, because the two of them are wondering, like, where the signal came from that, like, made the Narcissus auto dock. And so she's poking around on the computer, and, like, it starts to, like, talk back to her and, like, converse to her. And she's like, Mother doesn't talk like this, but Ash did. Wait a minute. So she pieces it together here, but she doesn't tell anyone else about it until a little bit later in the book. But this is when we as readers find out it's not like, for sure set in stone at this point, but this is the scene where Ellen's like, I think Ash transferred himself into the Narcissus's computer. I'm like
Yeah.
pretty sure he did that. Like now is when she says that,
Sure.
but it's not confirmed until later on.
Right. But we should just tell the listeners, Ash is here. Ash infected the Narcissus. He infected Mother in general, it seems. Like, he got into the Narcissus. I like the reveal of it when she mentions when she was using Mother's terminal room, she thought she was alone, but then she realized Ash had been there also. I like the idea that scene right before Ash got destroyed in Alien, while she was using the terminal, he was like behind her, like removed his like finger and plugged a USB plug into Mother and like downloaded himself in there. It tracks,
whatever
like,
it is he did. Yeah,
that kind of works out. Like I can handle that. I will
okay
believe that. That's a nice little reference to a scene in the movie also. But Ash is here and he's going to fuck all kinds of shit up. I think he has more of a presence in the audio drama. He certainly speaks a lot in the audio drama. He is voiced in that by Rutger Hauer, by the way.
Nice.
I think that I read that he just gets into everything and he's the reason like all the bad stuff basically happens from here on out, because he has this plan of course, executing Order 937 and getting an alien back to Weyland-Yutani, right?
Yeah, they pretty much go out of their way to point out that that's the reason Ripley's here at all. Like, if Hoop hadn't made that distress signal at the beginning of the story, none of this would have ever happened, because like the Narcissus was flying by and Ash, who is now in the Narcissus' system, picked up that distress signal and went, aha, that creature he's sounding sounds suspiciously like a xenomorph. Maybe I finally have the opportunity to continue with Order 937. And so he like re-trajectoried the ship to go over there in hopes of continuing the plan.
Right. I also like that he would have put himself into the ship's AI and to escape on the Narcissus anyway in an attempt to try to get information about the xenomorph back to Weyland-Yutani.
Yeah.
He's just generally like, his motivation tracks being an obsessed computer program basically with one purpose. Anyway, so they want to take the Samson down to the planet to get a new power cell for the Narcissus, which which is another weird thing, because like when the Narcissus gets picked up and they're like, you've been in hypersleep for 57 years, but you have a power cell that's only 20 years old, they're going to call some shenanigans on Ellen Ripley, right?
They say in the book that the reason they have to go down and get a new power cell is because her lifeboat, the Narcissus, is like out of date enough that the power cells they have on the Marion don't have the right hookups and they can't connect them together.
Okay.
And I was like, sure, man.
Yeah. I thought you were an engineer, Hoop. Come on.
Yeah. Whatever. Sure. Whatever.
You can do this. But anyway, so they got to take the shuttle that's full of the aliens. So what is their plan? They try to set up a bunch of cargo nets to catch the guys, right? To catch all the four Xenos inside.
The plan is basically they're going to grab a big cargo net and hold it in front of the door and then try to Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner them into the net and
Flawless
then drag
plan.
it out of an airlock and then throw it out.
Sure.
And as you may imagine, that plan goes perfectly and flawlessly without a hitch.
Hoop was like, why don't we paint a tunnel on this wall? And when they rush out, they'll think they can just run through the tunnel, but they'll hit the wall and get knocked out.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's basically what happens, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I said, everything goes flawlessly. Everything works exactly the way they want it to. And 3 people definitely do not get killed by a xenomorph at all. That's for sure. Nope.
Yeah. Wait, no, hold on. Maybe that's a big difference between our version. No. So this goes badly, right? They're armed with like mining tools, right? And nets, and basically
what happens is that they have these things that I don't remember. I think they're called like charge launchers or something in the book, but I always referred to them as bolt throwers. Like in my mind, that's what I called them because I could never remember the name. And they have some like mining picks and they have a couple of plasma torches.
I liked those gravity assisted or those like power assisted mining picks that like have like
those were cool.
It was like in Pacific Rim where they have like the jets to propel the fists to make them hit harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it made me think of that. And I think they're called bolt chargers, I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what their
I
name
don't
is, but
either.
yeah, like I said, I just call them bolt throwers, but they're like intended to basically like you have like a little cartridge, like an ammo box that you put into
Yeah.
it, and then it fires an explosive round deep into rock to like clear out walls for mining, basically.
It's like a ram set.
And basically, when they open the door, all four of the Xenos immediately charge out.
Yep.
One of them gets by and escapes into the ship, and two of them get lit on fire and burned to death. But some of the acid from one of the ones that gets killed opens a hole in the wall, and it creates like, you know, violent vacuum decompression, and the three aliens that are still in there get sucked out and die. But like during this fight, three of the characters gets killed. Powell gets his head blown into pieces by one of the xenomorphs on fire. One of the characters gets sucked out through the hole in the wall during the decompression. And the third guy, based on how the description happens in the actual book, I don't think he gets killed by a xenomorph. I think what happens is the two that are in the net, when they break it open, one of the wires flies out and slices his face open. And I think that's how he dies.
Something like that.
R.I.P. Powell, Welford, and Garcia. They're the three that died.
Garcia. Her body was left wedged between the bay doors leading into the Marion, later discovered by Snedden.
Yeah.
Ugh, Jesus.
So yeah, the three of them die, and like I said, three of the four Xenos get killed, but one of them is still just like loose on the ship.
Yeah.
And despite that, they're still like, well, the Samson is clear, so let's head on down to the mine, baby.
Right, we can't do anything. Like, we're not going to stay here with this thing. Let's go get our power supply and deal with this motherfucker later. Now, the section of the book on LV-178 is a pretty decent section of the audio drama. It is a lot of them exploring mines and elevators malfunctioning and stuff like that. So I don't want to go room by room in this. I want to talk about the big important pieces that we see in this. And one of them is, well, first of all, I guess, just a gigantic alien nest under the surface of this planet.
There sure is. They find it. The mine is 9 levels, and the first 4 have already been cleared out. The 4th level is where they're going, because the level 4 is where they have like their storage and excesses and stuff.
Yes.
And then levels 5 through 9 are like the active open mine where they're still actively digging.
Right.
So they're going to level 4, but when they get in the elevator to go down, the elevator breaks and they plummet to the bottom. And then when they get to level 9, they're working through the tunnels and they realize that this is just a massive fucking absolutely gigantic like xenomorph nest. Is like the entire like bottom floor of this mine.
So we've got LeChance, Kazionov, Baxter, Snedden, Hooper, and Ripley on this landing team, right? This is all of the survivors at this point. Everyone else has been killed.
Yeah, I don't think you missed anyone. Yeah, I believe that's everyone.
Yeah, we didn't have a Alien original screenplay moment here where
we did not.
Cleve Butcher or whatever the fuck his name was.
I don't remember what his last name is either. Damn.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're right. Listen to that episode to find out what his last name is, crew.
Hardly mattered at the time, apparently. Yeah, I'll never forget him though, whatever his name is. Anyway, so yeah, it was implied in the audio drama that somehow I think Ash manipulated the elevator. That's another thing I should touch on. Apparently, Ash also opened the shuttle door before everybody was ready when they were trying to clear out the Samson.
All right.
And that's why, like, they weren't fully prepared, and that's part of why the thing went funny, and it was his plan to get an alien on board. And now I think the implication is he somehow is like in the Samson's computer and everyone else's computer, and he's just like traveling around all these computer systems like the fucking architect in the Matrix, and he just like made the elevator fail and dropped them down to the 9th level of hell.
In the actual novel, the thing of the door to the Samson, it doesn't happen that way in the actual novel because they open the door because they're ready to open it. It wasn't Ash that did that.
Okay.
And in this, during the plummeting elevator scene, at the time, it's implied that it just happens because the elevator is just broken or doesn't work right or whatever.
Right.
But later on, like late in the book, Ash like kind of has a line while monologuing to himself that sort of implies he did that as well, but they never really make it super clear and never say for sure either way.
And he feels like a little bit of an unreliable narrator in this, a little bit, because he's talking about how this is like a game of chess and his pieces are all in place and all this shit. But like the dude, all of his plans really, really suck terribly if you think about them.
Yeah, none of them worked. Well, I mean, the only plan of his that really worked was letting Kane into the ship in the first movie. So.
Right. Yeah, he sucks. But I guess when you get Rutger Hauer to play the character for the audio drama, you're going to give him more to do also, right?
Yeah, because also I should say to the listeners, that's like the other thing that like the way Ash is involved in the narrative of this novel is like every couple of chapters they'll have like a little mid-chapter interlude where we see a transcription of Ash like detailing and attempting to send a message to the WY Science Division, and every single time the message does not get successfully transmitted, so we just kind of see him like rambling to himself whenever he's alone. Writing a diary. They even make that comparison directly later on in the book. So that's how he's like involved in the narrative of the story, as we just see him composing all of these messages all the time. So
our plucky band of heroes are all down in the mines, and they're just making their way like level by level. They find a gigantic alien hive. They find queen eggs, don't they?
They certainly do. Yeah.
It's important to note.
They do find a whole bunch of queen eggs. I believe there's either 12 or 16 of them.
Royal facehugger eggs.
But the other major discovery they find down here happens before that, actually.
Okay, it happens. So let's talk about that now, because it is an important piece of alien lore here that, if you take this book as canon, like I want to do, definitively proves that the engineers did not create the Xenomorph.
Yeah.
In my opinion. They find a derelict ship underground here, right?
And it is, I should point out, it is not an engineer ship.
It is not an engineer ship. In fact, it is like a bio ship. It's like a living ship.
Yeah.
Right. They
describe it as a ship that was grown, not built, is how they phrase it in the book.
Believe that was LeChance. He's like, he's a great way to build a ship, grow it.
Yeah.
Right. It's all organic material. And it seems to have been piloted by, they find statues of these alien creatures that are dog-like in appearance, quadrupedal, but like huge and tall. Right.
Yeah.
And I think standing up on their hind legs.
See, that was actually one thing I was going to ask you. They're described as having 4 legs, but do you picture them as humanoid but with 2 legs on each side, or do you picture them as looking more like, say, a centaur, for instance? Like, they never really described what these things actually looked like, and so I'm curious what your mental image of them was.
I pictured them standing, like looking like dogs standing on 2 legs. Like with their other 2 legs in the air, but like shaped like they would be, like they could run, with all 4. You know what I mean?
I got you.
Yeah. This race didn't get named in this, but Tim Lebbon went on to write a trilogy of novels. I think it's Aliens, Invasion, Predator, Incursion, and Aliens versus Predator, Armageddon. That's the trilogy he wrote. Or sorry, the Predator novel comes first. Predator, Incursion, Alien Invasion, Alien versus Predator, Armageddon. And I read that Predator novel a long, long time ago. This species gets mentioned in those books. They are called the Drukathi. Okay.
Drukathi. All right.
Yes. They, according to our favorite website, avp.fandom.com, the Xenopedia.
Mm-hmm.
The Drukathi were an ancient race of aliens that used to inhabit the Milky Way galaxy. They possessed immensely powerful and advanced technologies to the point where even the Iwachia feared them, despite the fact that the Drukathi had moved on and no longer inhabited the galaxy. Notably, the Drukathi had a close relationship with the species Xenomorph XX121, apparently breeding and otherwise utilizing the creatures for their own ends. So this is another ancient race, because this ship that they have found is thousands of years old, they speculate, right? I think Sneddon does some analysis on it. She certainly does a lot of cataloging of the way it looks.
Yeah, they find it basically like completely buried underground with like, tons and tons and tons of rock above it, not just implying but directly in text stating that this thing has been here for tens or for thousands or possibly tens of thousands of years.
Right. So that predates anything engineering we've seen, for sure. Right.
It sure does.
Yeah. I don't think that the Drukathi, like, first of all, who knows where they fit into canon nowadays? I don't know if they're mentioned in any of the supplemental Alien RPG stuff.
I don't remember if they ever were or not. I haven't gone through that section of the book very closely, so I couldn't tell you for sure either way.
Right. Nothing's been published about them yet in any case. Doesn't mean there won't be, right? But but they are an ancient biospecies. What's interesting is that their ship is a bioship. It's almost like they're trying to imply that they did genetic experimentation and stuff as well. Yeah. And I wonder if like they and the engineers were like buddies, or if they gave way to the engineers even, like, because they predate them. There's a lot to speculate there, but the important thing is they in this hive are older than Prometheus.
They sure are. Yes, that is correct.
So therefore older than Alien Covenant when we first see an almost xenomorph, right?
Yep. But basically, though, they make this momentous discovery, and I believe they actually say it might not necessarily be in this part of the book, but there is some part of the book or another where they go out of their way to specify that first contact happened about 80 years prior to the events of this novel.
Okay.
So it is for sure definitive that this is not the first non-xenomorph alien race they've ever discovered, according to the canon of this book specifically.
Also tracks with Kane's sort of blasé attitude at finding the derelict in Alien also. First contact's already happened, so they're looking at runner-up, right? We should say that during all of this stuff, Ellen Ripley has been feeding them information about the xenomorphs. She's filled them all in on, like, the derelict ship and what happened to Kane and the face hugger, the life cycle, the acid blood, all of that stuff. Yeah. We forgot to mention the acid spraying guns that they took down with them. Yeah,
they found because the xenomorphs, at this point haven't actually shown up in the mine yet. They've come across the hive, but they haven't come across any eggs or any xenomorphs or anything. That'll happen shortly. Yeah. But like before they went down and like the elevator broke and all that, they got a couple of acid sprayer guns that I believe they say shoot hydrofluoric acid, I believe. Yes. Yeah. And like the character, Hoop specifically is the one that grabs it. And he even says, I don't even know if this acid is going to like do anything to them because they're acidic. So let's just find out and hope it works out well.
Sure. I like the improvised weapon aspect of this that feels very
it's fun.
Alien Isolation to me, or original Alien, where it's not just smart guns and sentries and all this stuff I like to play with in Fireteam Elite. I like them having to like, well, what do we have? We got pickaxes, we got these bolt chargers, we got these acid guns that we prototyped. Let's just fucking go get some power cells, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So from here, they do in fact find the gigantic hive. They also find some fossilized Dothraki. I already forgot the name.
Yeah. I keep on wanting to say
Drukathi.
Drukathi. I think it's
Drukathi.
It is Drukathi? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They look like dog people, only big. LeChant regarding dead Drukathi from Alien Out of the Shadows. That's a quote from LeChance.
But basically, though, there is one little bit though that you missed is that when they come across this big, huge ship,
Uh-huh.
reason they end up going into it is because a horde of xenomorphs show up behind them
Right.
and like herd/chase
Yes.
the humans into the ship. And
This
that's
is
the reason
important.
they go into it, because that's like the only way they can get out. Because like the xenomorphs are coming in through like the only tunnel into
Right.
this room. So
Yeah, so the xenomorphs know that they're there, and they are doing this herding tactic, right? Where they are really like,
yeah.
this is a hive. This isn't a lone drone on, a ship, right? Where he doesn't really
Yeah.
know what to do. So he's kind of like putting Dallas in a nest because I don't know. Or trying to trigger the egg morphing, right?
Yeah.
This is a colony. And they have
Mhm.
now new livestock for procreation. And they got all of these queen eggs and they want to propagate. So they are not outright killing our heroes. They are really doing like group herding tactics to them throughout this, which
Yeah.
makes sense. It makes sense that a lot of them survive this because they're not being outright attacked and killed. Obviously, if the Xenos wanted to, they would have just bopped in there and ripped their heads off. It wouldn't have been a challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's an interesting aspect of the alien species that I like that the book touched on that they're not just, ultimately they're going to murder you, but they're going to hold off on just ripping your head off so that they can propagate.
There's also one other thing that happens here that
Sure.
I'm mentioning now because it becomes important at the end of the book.
Yes.
Ever since Ripley first showed up, she's been having nightmares about the xenomorphs.
Of course.
But after she was woken up and has the meetings with meets everyone else and starts going on these missions with them and everything.
Yeah.
She keeps on having these insistent I don't know what you want to call them, like visions or waking dreams or whatever it is you want to call them. She keeps on having these intuitive visions of Amanda at various ages of,
interesting,
somewhere between child and teenager. She keeps on having these visions of Amanda getting face hugged and then watching a chest burster pop out of her. She keeps on getting distracted by these visions over and over and over and over again over the course of the book. And the reason I'm mentioning it now is because she has one of them right here, and this is the first part of the book where after she has one, she's like, oh man, I'm starting to go crazy. I'm starting to lose my mind. I don't know how much more of these visions I can deal with or survive through anymore. And like I said, the reason I'm mentioning this now is because that comes into play at the end of the book. So I'm just laying in that groundwork right now.
So the way the audio drama presented that is every now and then someone would look over and be like, hey, Ripley, are you okay? You're kind of like moving your lips and staring off into space. Right. Like it was a lot of that stuff with her just sort of checking out, not really talking about visions of Amanda. There was Amanda stuff in this, but that wasn't it. So that's really interesting. I just don't think they knew how to do the internal monologue stuff in this.
It's the some of the visions are of stuff that she couldn't even have possibly been possible. There's one vision where it happens when Amanda is 16, which Ellen never even saw.
Right.
And also remember how throughout Isolation, there keeps on being a reference to how Ellen said, oh, I'm going to buy you a really cool, neat gift for your 11th birthday, but it's going to be a surprise. So I'm not going to tell you what it is. And there's a minor thread where Amanda's I wonder what that gift was supposed to be. Well, according to one of the visions, if the gift that we see Ellen giving Amanda is supposed to be that big gift she was talking about, then that major gift turns out to be a big shield-shaped purple badge that says I am 11 in a goofy font on it.
Honestly, best gift.
And the reason it's significant is because we find this out during one of these lucid dreams that
Sure.
Ellen's having.
Yeah.
And like she's at her 11th birthday party and she like puts the badge on and Amanda's like, "Yay, I love it," or whatever. And then like her shirt starts to puff out and a chest burster
Jesus
pops
Christ.
out of her. And
Holy
like
moly.
that's like I said, like these are the visions she keeps having throughout the book. Like every single one of them is she's with Amanda, they're doing something fun, and then Amanda has a chest burster pop out of her. Or like they're doing something and then she loses sight of Amanda for 5 seconds and then turns around and Amanda has a face hugger on her. Like that's what all of the visions are every single time. They're all something like that.
Jesus.
But
None
yeah,
of those were in this. Yeah. So inside this this alien ship that they're in, when they find the nest full of eggs that they've been kind of herded into.
This is where they come across the regular Xenomorph nursery.
Right.
And by this point they already found corpses of those dog people.
Yes.
Rather than seeing the statues, they came across actual, like, well, not living, but like corpses of actual formerly alive ones.
Right. And they encounter a xenomorph that spawned from one of them as well. They
encounter several of them, actually.
They've been hibernating down there for thousands of years, theoretically.
They come across a xenomorph birthing ground where there's a whole bunch of eggs all over, and each one of the eggs has a xenomorph that was birthed from these dog guys, like next to it, guarding it.
Right.
Snedden fucks up and gets a face hugger on her, and then Kazyanov freaks out and lights all of the eggs on fire.
Yes.
Which kills all of the face hugger, but wakes up all of the dog style xenomorphs.
Yeah, dude.
And Kazyanov gets blinded by acid and part of her face and hand melted off. And then, let's see, they blow up one of the xenomorphs. And then after this, I actually have a list. I took stock of what's going on at this point.
Sure. Let me say one thing before we do that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The dog aliens guarding each egg, and they're kind of like fossilized, right? Like they have like like almost like dust all over them. They look like they look like fossils, but they come back alive.
They look dead, and everyone was surprised when they unfolded like Naboo robots from episode 1 and like turned out to be alive.
Nice.
So
the fact that there was one guarding each egg. So there was a scene earlier in that where they find just some remains of the dog species, and it looks like it was two parents like huddled down with a child, like protecting the child, you know?
Yeah.
And they're all dead. So then to find the xenomorphs that birthed from the dogs, each huddling next to an egg protecting the child, it's very interesting. And I wonder if that's like a behavior they picked up from their host. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, could be.
There's clearly something there about like the loyalty of a dog and all of that kind of stuff too, because these are dog aliens. And like, that's, I think, absolutely Tim Lebbon's intention with that. Just a nice detail. I like stuff like that. The behavior, I like seeing the behavioral differences when a Xeno comes from a different creature, a non-human
Yeah, that is
host.
fun. You're right.
Yeah, that's all. Where are we?
At this point, like I said, they had just torched that entire egg birthing chamber. This is not the queen birthing chamber. This is the regular one before that.
Right.
And you were asking because you're like, oh, is this when Baxter broke his ankle? It's funny you say that because I actually have a list here. After that, they actually sit down for a moment to heal. And I wrote down what's going on with everyone.
Yes.
LaChance and Ripley are both fine. Neither of them have been injured. Anything other than like, minor cuts or whatever.
Right. I thought Ripley did get like cut by one of the big guys.
That happens later.
Okay.
Hooper has a semi-major burn on his leg from a piece of molten rock landing on the side of his leg and burning through it.
Yeah, because they used that was the bolt charger.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
that is the only major wound he has so far. Snedden has a face hugger on her, but otherwise is fine.
Yeah.
Baxter broke his ankle during the elevator fall, but otherwise
Okay.
hasn't taken any meaningful wounds. Kazyanov is still blind with a partially melted face and hand,
Jesus.
and that's all 6 of them. So they take a moment to rest, and that's like where everyone is at the moment. And
Okay.
so after that, they keep on going after healing up a bit,
Mhm.
and they pass through this tunnel that's like a T-junction, but the side junction goes up rather
Right.
than through the side, and they hear something moving around in it. And so they just start like firing while running by, and then the thing
Yes.
drops down onto the ground, and turns out it is an immature, not yet fully grown queen.
Oh, that's right.
And they
Yeah.
find that out, when Ripley uses an explosive charge to like blow its abdomen open,
And
and a whole bunch of
eggs. Yeah.
immature, dead eggs just sprawl out onto the ground.
Jesus. Yeah, I remember that.
And
God.
then after doing that,
Sure.
they run to another tunnel, and that tunnel leads into a room where this is like the egg chamber where like the royal facehuggers were. That
Right.
queen they just killed came from here
Came from
because
here.
all but one of the eggs is still closed, and they're like, aha.
We found it. The hatchery, the royal hatchery, like the like Tars Tarkas and the Green Martians have in the John Carter books.
Correct.
That's a
That is
reference
correct.
for somebody out there. And they've got they find like all the miners and stuff like webbed up in these nests.
And yeah, like there's a whole bunch of people strung up, and there's all like the royal face huggers over here.
Right.
And so they're about to
Big
leave,
eggs.
and then
Different
Ripley's
eggs.
like, no. And well, they're about to leave, and then Ripley's like, no, we gotta fucking kill all these things.
Have to.
And so they go back, and so they start torching these royal eggs,
Right.
and a lot of them are breaking open and dying and stuff, but like that attracts xenomorphs.
Right.
And so the Xenos charge in to defend, and during this fight is when like Ripley gets messed up really bad.
Right.
She like takes a couple of claw slashes, I think maybe a tail slash. I think she gets some acid sprayed
Yeah.
on her. I don't remember exactly what happened to her,
She
but
gets
like this
fucked
is
up.
this is the spot where she like actually gets pretty badly messed up.
Right. Which is like, I think the only time we've seen that happen to her in a movie, like in an Alien story, right? Like she came
Pretty
out
much,
of Alien
yeah.
pretty unscathed. She comes out of Aliens pretty unscathed. Spoiler alert. Not so much in Alien 3, but that was,
yeah, I
you know,
suppose. Good point.
but the circumstances of that are different, right? I wouldn't. She wasn't wounded. She was just ended, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, but yeah, she takes damage in this. I just want to say, in the audio drama, she feels like a supporting character. She's not a main character. She's mainly just there to like tell people about the aliens, and she has a little bit of a flirtation with Hoop. She does some cool stuff with the acid gun and the bolt charger and stuff, but like she's not. It doesn't feel. It's not Ripley like we know Ripley a little bit, you know. It's Ripley like we see her in maybe the first half of Alien before the focus really shifts to her. You know what I mean?
I mean, well, see, here's the thing. Yes, I do, but I read the actual novel in which she is like the main character of the novel. So
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Like, I think in my version, I think I'm definitely missing something. Like, I didn't get any
Yeah.
of these Amanda flashbacks or anything, but you know, she had some cool moments for sure, but it really didn't feel like a Ripley story, which is why I kind of led this with, I don't know if she needed to be here for this, you know?
yeah, she is certainly a lot more of a main character in the actual novel for sure.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear it. So what is their plan to destroy this nest? Like, they make it out of there, skin of their teeth, right?
Well, you missed one or two things first.
Okay.
Their whole plan, the reason why they were down on level 9 is because, they had to go to level 4, but the elevator went out.
Right.
So they had to traverse to the other side of the mine and take the second elevator up
Yeah.
to where they were going. All this stuff happened on the way. They get to the elevator, and then they get attacked by a swarm of xenomorphs, like while the elevator is about to go up.
Sure.
And then Baxter gets partially pulled out of the elevator and then ripped in half at
Yeah,
the
he
waist
does.
when the elevator finally goes all the way up.
Bye
So
bye,
Baxter,
Baxter.
R.I.P. Yeah, he's dead as hell.
Right.
But they get up to level 4, find the extra fuel cells, and there's more than one of them. So what they do is they load one of them up onto like a stretcher tray thing,
Right.
and then they program the other one to overload and go nuclear and
Yes.
destroy the mine.
So that happened for me when they were still kind of in that royal chamber, I believe. And Ripley has to like talk them into it because they're still obsessed with the ancient, the Trukathi ship, right?
Yeah.
They're still like, that is a significant historical find. That is the most amazing thing we've ever seen. We can't just destroy it. And Ripley is like, no, we can't let these things get found. We can't let these things get off the planet. And they're like, well, if you set off one of those fuel cells, it's going to be like a nuclear bomb going off. And she's like, exactly. And Hoop's like, exactly. And it was another moment of Ripley being like, hey, like, we're going to get out of here. We're going to survive, but we have to take care of this also. This is priority 1, destroy this nest, right? Let's take off and nuke the entire site from orbit. It's the only way to be sure, as I like to quote,
I may be misremembering it, but in the actual novel, I think it was Hoop's idea to do that, not Ripley's, but I don't remember for sure.
I think Ripley definitely gets credit for it in this. She may have had, it may have been one of those things where she like pitches the idea and he picks up on it,
Yeah, maybe. I truly like those kind of details. I don't quite remember because I read this like around a week ago, give or take. So there's a lot of little details of that kind of stuff that I don't quite remember anymore. But yeah, in the book, they get back up to level 4, set one of the fuel cells to blow up and go nuclear, and then take the other one with them.
Yeah.
And they get back up onto the ship, and they're like, all right, well, now that we have the fuel cell, our plan with the Narcissus is going to work, so we're going to scrounge as much out of the remains of the Marion as we can before we leave. And while Hoop stays behind to set up the fuel cell, the rest of them head out. And when they do, I believe they're in the medical bay when the Xenomorph that was still on the ship shows up and kills LeChance.
Yes, I believe so. And they take Ellen to the Medpod.
Well,
it goes very audio drama goes very quick from here. Like they get back to the ship. I think the only encounter I really remember them having with the Xenomorph was when Sneddon is finally about to hatch the facehugger. Meanwhile, Ellen's in the Medpod and Hooper is prepping the ship and also getting the program to wipe Ash from the system. Like that's all happening at the same time. This is literally like chapter 10 of 10 for the audiobook is all the rest of the stuff on the ship. So it moves very quickly for me.
This is probably something right around 80-85% of the book. So there is some additional stuff here that I got.
Okay.
Basically, on the way back to the Marion, they realize that Sneddon's facehugger fell off. Right. And so she's all like, I'll hang out by the airlock and blow myself out when it comes time and all that.
Yes.
But
and Ripley's like, we can't let her on the ship. Like we can't let her,
And everyone agrees with her, which is the key thing, because earlier on, when Sneddon first got facehugged and she's like, we can't take her with us, everyone's like, no, we're taking her with us. But now
that we've been through hell,
Ripley's like, we can't do this. And everyone else is like, I agree. And Sneddon's like, yeah, I agree. But after LeChance gets killed and the Xenomorph runs off, Sneddon chases after it and then corners it. And then as the chest burster is exploding out of her, she blows herself up and kills herself, the chest burster, and the Xenomorph.
Blows a crate of explosives, takes all 3 of them out. And in the audiobook version does do some damage to Hooper at the same time. He gets some more burns, but he's a little crispy, but he's fine.
Yeah, in this, Sneddon runs off by herself and no one else is there with her when it happened, and they're listening to it over the intercom rather than seeing it happen.
Okay.
But Sneddon kills herself and the chest burster and the Xenomorph, and right around this time is when the Marion actually starts breaking apart in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And so it's Hoop and Kazyanov and Ripley are the only people left alive.
Right.
And they cart her over to the med bay so that they can put her in a Prometheus-style med pod.
Yes. Which they had used on her earlier, to be fair.
They had.
She's like kind of out of it at this point. This is where I think the kind of lucid dream stuff was catching up to her in the novel, the way it was presented in that, where she just like wasn't all here from her injuries and the trauma and everything, right?
And so this is the one part of the book that, like, you know, I'm just going to admit to you and the listeners right now, this is the one part of the book I fucking hated. I thought it was so stupid and awful, and it really legitimately made me mad. They load her up into the Medpod because, like, you know, she's burnt and cut and wounded all over. Right. And, like, she, you know, grabs Hooper by the collar and starts shaking him. And she's like, I keep having these visions of Amanda. They're haunting me. If you don't do something about it, I'll be tormented by these visions forever. Sure. You need to get rid of them. And Kazyanov is like, well, these things can do some stuff for like mental trauma. And she's like, please PTSD. Just make me forget. Yeah, right. She's like, please just make me forget using this Medpod. And so while she's in there, they also reprogram her brain so that she like forgets all the Amanda visions. But by doing that, they have to wipe her mind entirely of the events of the last like week of her life. Right. And that is the in-story explanation for why Ellen Ripley is not aware that the events of the novel happened at the beginning of Aliens. And it's extremely stupid, and I hate it, and it makes me so fucking mad.
That does play out a little different in the audio drama, so I'm going to hold that until we finish this summary, because we're almost there.
And so Ripley basically, well, she's finished with that,
right? And
like Ripley, you know, the little ping happens, letting Kazyanov know she's done, and so they load Ripley out and puts her on a cart, and then they're like, all right, well, Kazyanov, you also need to go in there because she's the one that got like melted by acid and stuff, right. And so she goes in there.
She was able to like control that Medpod without a lot of vision. Also, yeah. She wasn't completely blind from what I remember, but she was not.
Well, she didn't like get her eyes melted out. Like the way they describe it in the novel is that it was like the mist from the acid temporarily blinded her. So by the time this happened, she got her vision back, but she like climbs in the pod and activates it to heal her up. And then Ash takes over the pod and kills her with it.
She's like, Alexa, heal Ripley's wounds. My Alexa just went off from that. Hold on. Hey Siri, can you erase Ellen Ripley's memories? Because you can't see anything, right? So she's got to use like voice command. And fortunately, the Medpods have like all of the smartest home assistants built in. That's all. Just making jokes. Just making jokes here. They're not funny apparently, but.
Well, I mean, like I said, by this point, we'd already established she had her vision back. If you had made that joke 10 seconds before we established that fact, it probably would have worked.
Well, I'm going to edit and move it down, or I'm just going to leave it like it is. It doesn't matter.
There you go. Perfect.
Anyway.
But anyway, like I said, they load Ripley out, and Kazyanov gets in, and she like activates the thing to heal her up, and then the scalpels come out and it kills her. Like Ash takes over the Medpod and just kills her.
Cuts her up with laser scalpels, just like slices and dices her, like in that first Resident Evil movie.
And see, it's funny you say that because that is not what happens in the novel.
Oh yeah, what does he do? Like just like cut her throat or something?
Yeah, he pulls out a big scalpel and just slices her throat open.
So in the book, like there's no narrator or anything, so it's a lot of sounds and people saying what's going on, you know. Mm-hmm. So I just interpreted it as like she just got like julienned, right?
From what I can tell,
she's like screaming in terror as it's happening, and it's like zoo 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 zoo.
Yeah, from what I can tell, that is intended to be what happens in the audio drama. It's like slices her up into pieces.
Right.
But yeah, in the novel, one of the robot arms with a scalpel on it just comes and just cuts her throat open, and that's the end of that.
I kind of like that's kind of fucking sick, honestly. Like that. That's like a good classic like Jason throat slit in a Friday the 13th. You know when they do a good one, it's a good one, right? Anyway,
you know it.
Let's move on.
But Hoop takes Ripley back to the Narcissus.
Throats. Yeah,
well, that's what happens in the book, you know.
Right.
He takes Ripley to the Narcissus, packs her up in the one quote unquote
only one
cryopod.
Sure.
And then he uses a USB stick to destroy Ash and wipe the program. And so as of this point, Ash is officially dead. There's none of his programming left. Ash has completely been deprogrammed and is gone now.
Really?
However,
there we go.
He finds out that before Ash got fully destroyed, he locked the docking arm in place so that you can't disable it from inside the ship. And so he has to basically manually decouple the arm and send the Narcissus out without him, and thereby leaving her exactly in the same place she was when the first movie ended. And he
takes all of his food supplies and bourbon with him as well.
And then loads him up onto the Samson and then just fires on all cylinders and says, let's hope somebody else finds me before I go insane or die of old age. And that is how the book ends.
This is Chris Hooper, last survivor of the Marion, having a toast to friends I've lost or something like that. Yeah.
Something to that effect, yeah.
So some big differences. I don't think I'm going to comb through every single little thing here, but Ash has a much more active role in the audio drama. Once the Narcissus docked with the Marion, he got into the Marion's computers right away. I touched on that earlier. He opened that door early. He is using like vent doors and stuff like that to trap the alien in certain places. Like that's why when they're on the ship, they were relatively safe for it before they went down to the planet, safe from it before they went down to the planet, because he had kind of quarantined it, because his plan was to get them to bring up an embryo, a face hugger, anything else with them, right? So he wanted them to get down to the planet and return.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, the program that Hoop uses to eliminate him is a Weyland-Yutani antivirus program that LeChance had on his data pad.
All right.
So he uses that to remove Ash from the Narcissus. But then as he goes to do the remote docking release or whatever it's called, he can't, and Ash comes over the speakers of the Marion. He's still infected the Marion. So he forces Hooper to come back on board. Because at this point, I don't know why this doesn't make as much sense as like what you explained. Because he's like, Ash is like, I'm still trying to get my queen Ripley. And it's like, well, but you're off the ship. Like, this is just spite now. This doesn't add anything to your plan. The same stuff is going to happen. Right.
Yeah. Sure.
Especially because he then tries to also stop Hooper from leaving on the Samson. He's also infected the Samson because it's part of the same computer network, and Hooper has to use the USB stick on the Samson as well. Ash kind of like is left alone on the Marion in the computer system, talking about how much of a fucking failure he is as it like collapses into the atmosphere.
Okay, I will admit there may have been a part in the novel where like some of his leftover programming was still on the Samson. I know like Ash didn't have control of it, but like there may have been like a little minor thing where he's like, oh, I got to remove a little bit of Ash from the Samson before I can take off or whatever. But like, yeah, he does not have like control over it like he does in the audio drama. Like when he inserts that USB into the Narcissus, it kills Ash in the novel.
And it doesn't in the book. It just removes him from the Narcissus, but he's still backed up on the Samson and the Marion and like all of these other places. And that's why he was able to like, because he was infected to the Marion, he was somehow then able to affect the elevator on the planet and just affect all of this stuff. But like, it's really painted as him allowing them to go down. He could have stopped them at any point, but he wanted them to, because he wants them to get another face hugger, right? He wants them to return, but he wants them to be exposed to the alien in return. But like, that's a pretty risky, like sending them down into the hive feels fucking risky. Like you could have lost all of them very easily. And then I guess his thinking is he's still got the one on board, but he also knows he can't send any transmissions. So like, what's your plan, dude?
And even with the one that is on board, what are you going to fucking do with that? It's on board of a ship that is literally about to burn up in the atmosphere of a planet. Like, how the fuck are you going to get it off?
It would make sense if he was going to try to like herd it somehow into the Narcissus and launch the Narcissus. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Because then he could like pilot it straight back to like a Weyland-Yutani way station or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For sure.
But one of the things that's really interesting is that Amanda Ripley stuff was present in the audio drama, but not in the way that it seems to have been in the novel. Like,
oh yeah, I want to follow up on something I said earlier.
yeah.
Hoop and Ripley are the two main characters of the novel.
Okay, right.
Like, for sure, by a wide margin.
Well, Ridley gets plenty to do in this, but she doesn't seem to have center focus. We're not spending any time with her in her monologue, We're not hearing about her nightmares. I think she makes a couple references to Amanda here and there, but it's not like nightmares and flashback and like waking nightmares of it. You just get what I noted, what I was said with people noticing her being kind of like checked out for a minute or two here and there. Like that's largely what you see. To the point where at the end, she's not begging to forget these nightmares about Amanda. She's just like just begging to forget the trauma in general. It's not like, please erase this stuff. She's not asking for it. In fact, I think she doesn't ask for it at all. I think that Hooper just sort of decides, like, you've been through so much, like you got woken from a nightmare to enter a new nightmare. He almost does it as like a moment of like pity and just to like relieve this thing from her, that like just to sort of keep her from experiencing more suffering, right? He removes the memories, and I think that's a little better than her like begging, but it raises other questions about like consent and stuff like that, which is
it's
just another can of worms.
It's almost the same amount of shitty, but just for a different reason.
Right. Especially because he's still planning on being in the shuttle with her, and he's like, I'm going to tell you. He says to her, I'm just going to tell you what you need to know when you wake up. Like, he's not even going to give her all the details,
Yep,
So, like,
pretty much.
He was essentially going to lie to her about the aliens, I think, and be like, you docked with our ship that was crashing, and we're the only two who escaped. Yeah, and just let her think that she didn't run into aliens again.
I guess.
Couple other things about Amanda. The audio drama starts with Ripley recording a message to Amanda on the Narcissus before she records her final sign-off, which is something that they talked about in the Alien Isolation novel. It is a different message than that novel. And I think in the Isolation novel, I know we just did it, but I think she records her Last Survivor of the Nostromo monologue, I'll call it, and then and then records one to Amanda after that. Whereas in this one, she did it first, which
that's the
sense.
implication anyway.
Right. But this very clearly shows her recording one first, which is nice. It fixes that weird bit of weirdness because it was a personal log, and then she switches over to a broadcast message. I liked that detail because this came out like at the same time as Alien Isolation, so that's why they were like really hitting a lot of Amanda stuff in this. They also talk a lot about working Joes and Seegson systems and things like that in the book, just mentions of them that they had them on the mines and stuff like that. Again, I think just trying to do stuff to tie into Alien Isolation.
It's funny because I think, Isolation the game came out about 6 months after the novel did. Okay. The novel came out in January and Isolation came out in July. Right. However, the audio drama, I think, came out like later. The audio drama was released in 2016, like over 2 years after the novel came out. So when they made the audio drama, they went back through and retconned in a whole bunch of Isolation references that were not in the original book.
Correct. Yes. They also have a section in the audio drama that I think is absent from the book. Tell me if it is or not, where Ash is like looking at other possibilities, and he thinks, perhaps if I can't get Ripley infected or get her to carry an embryo, perhaps I can target her daughter. And he looks up in the computer files of the database, the Weyland-Yutani database on the Marion. He looks up Amanda Ripley's file.
I'm like 80% sure that does not happen in the book.
Yeah, that seems like a forced, we're going to make this in continuity with Isolation thing. But we get some conflicting information in this than we got in Isolation. For starters, this mentions Amanda Ripley being born in Wisconsin, not in Vancouver, I believe, is the book, right?
Yes. Vancouver, yes, that is correct.
Yeah, so Amanda is not Canadian in this continuity. It also says that she was raised by foster parents after Ellen left or went missing on the Nostromo
All right.
until she was like 16 or 18 or something like that. So it says that she was put in a foster care program. So there's no mention of Paul or any of that stuff, right? And again, this predates the Isolation novel, but I think the Isolation novel has taken precedent, especially if this was absent from the printed book and it's just in this audio drama, right? The biggest thing is that her file also says that Amanda Ripley is a Weyland-Yutani engineer, which also contradicts everything we learned about Amanda in Isolation.
Oh, there's also another continuity error.
Yeah.
Couldn't forget the word there, that this book introduces in comparison to Isolation, that since you didn't mention it there, I assume it's something that was not mentioned in the audiobook at all.
Or I might have missed it.
Possibly. There's another little continuity error here, or rather a continuity difference between this and Isolation. Well, the Isolation novelization, anyway, is that in this book, they say that the Nostromo was Ripley's first ever space voyage.
Oh, it is not. Absolutely not.
Yeah, they say, because when she leaves the Marion and the Samson lands on 178 and they step off the ship and go into the mine, while they're traveling through the mine, there's one chapter ends and another one begins, and the beginning of the next chapter is Ellen thinking to herself, oh my God, I just realized, when I stepped down off of that ship, I stepped down onto an alien planet other than Earth. And it is the first time I'd ever been on a planet that wasn't Earth, because the Nostromo was the first time ever that I ever went out on space after I got my certificate saying I could be a space trucker. The Nostromo was my first ever job when all of this happened. And I was like, haha, not according to Isolation, pulling on my collar.
And I just don't believe that. She's way too seasoned and rational and in charge, in Alien, for her to be green around the gills, or whatever the term is.
The thing of it is that at the end of the day, I think this book, I think there's enough evidence for this book to be able to make the claim that it's not actually canon. Sure. But the thing of it is that kind of stuff, I don't think I care enough to really fret over it that much.
Right.
Is the book canon? Yeah, sure. Does it introduce some retcons or continuity errors that maybe don't make a lot of sense? Or if you nitpick, you could say it's not canon? Yeah, probably. But is it canon? Sure. Why the fuck not? Who gives a shit? Whatever,
Yeah.
All that stuff that's different, or you could use as factoids to point out that it's not. It's just a quirk of the book, it's true in this book, but it's not true overall for the franchise. Whatever.
You could make the case that, there's some minor things like that, but you could make the case that this book was written published 5 years before the Alien Isolation book, right?
Yeah, correct.
And it came out at the same time as the game, so it counted for a long time if you wanted to, until the Isolation novel came out 5 years later and things got retconned. It still fit with game canon, it still fit with movie canon well enough. Minor things like a updated power cell and a missing grappling gun notwithstanding, you could, it's very easy to say that's such minor detail stuff. Most people aren't going to notice that or question it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Except that there's a line in Aliens where they say they took the shuttle apart piece by piece and found no evidence. It could have been a cover up, Weyland-Yutani knew and is covering it up, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, because we already covered Isolation, it's easy to go, oh man, all this book retcons all this stuff that Isolation introduced, but we covered Isolation first, but the Isolation novel was made 5 years after this.
Sure.
So even though we already talked about Isolation, that's the retcon, not this book, know?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know if there's any other major details I want to go about, except that in the book, in the audio drama at least, Ripley has an extensive knowledge of the Xenomorph that maybe she shouldn't have yet. She mentions they have acid blood, even though she never saw the adult bleed acid. That's just canon stuff.
That happens also in the novel. She does say they have acid blood, but
Right.
in the novel, she specifically says that the face huggers do, and even says, I don't know for sure if the full grown ones do or not.
Oh,
But
I
she
like
does
that.
say, oh, they have acid blood.
So that works. That actually fixes a weird retcon or a weird continuity error from Alien to Aliens that she's like, I don't
Yeah.
know that they all do. I just know that the little guys do. In the audio
Yeah.
drama, she's like, they all have it. She also, in the audio drama, when they see the hive like growing inside the mines and stuff, she mentions that that's how the Nostromo began to look, which is only in a deleted scene. It's only in the egg morphing scene of the director's
it's only in
cut.
the director's cut. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah, she definitely does not say that in the original novel.
right. There's a bunch of minor stuff like that, which is all excusable and fine, right? Like, again,
Yeah, sure.
we could nitpick any of these things and find contradictions. Like, and
Yeah, exactly.
we're going to talk about them, but I don't think it ruins the experience. Like, there's so many paths that the Alien franchise takes. There's Dark Horse comics, there's old novels, there's new novels, there's games, there's stuff where people absolutely argue that predators are present for all of this stuff, even though that's not my personal canon. I think that's one of the really great things about the Alien universe is if you want it all to fit together, you can get it to fit together well enough, but you can also just sort of like pick and choose your own canon, right?
Yeah, for sure.
For a long time, when this came out, and then the River of Pain, I believe, the Aliens prequel novel, I was like, you know what?
Yeah, that's River of Pain, yes.
Yeah, and I was like sitting, it was after Prometheus, and it was, I think I was reevaluating things after Covenant, and I wasn't too up on either of those at the time. And I was like, you know what? Maybe for me, it's just Alien, Aliens, Out of the Shadows, and River of Pain. Maybe that's my Alien canon. And and Isolation. Maybe that's my Alien canon. Maybe everything else is just expanded universe stuff, but these are the things that I am taking as my own personal Alien timeline. I'm much more open. I don't need everything to fit together now.
Same.
Like, I want to just check it all out, check out all the stuff I've missed, revisit all the stuff that I've already seen, and just let it all exist and coexist and not be too concerned about what does and doesn't matter to canon, because that's exhausting, you know?
Yeah, tell me about it. I for a long time I was a big superheroes guy, and so I was one of those dudes that like cared about continuity errors in MCU movies, and then after a while I was like, what am I fucking doing? Like, this doesn't matter at all, and so I just gave it up entirely.
Yeah, and it's nice, right?
Yeah, so I know what you mean. And yeah, you're right. It rules. It's so easier to enjoy stuff now that I don't care about making sure every single thing jigsaws perfectly together. Who cares?
Yes. I just like a fun Alien story. And honestly, this was a fun Alien story for me. This felt in line with Alien, the original, to some extent. The version of it that I listened to, I'm not convinced it needed to be a Ripley story, but I think that having Ash there pulling strings and stuff is an interesting idea that maybe wasn't executed perfectly, because it seems like they tried to add a lot of that stuff to this version. But it was fun, and I liked the discovery of a new alien species, a gigantic nest on a planet, a separate planet from LV-426, you know, that's got Xenos on it. I like that. It's another alien story in the universe, and I really enjoy the audio drama.
Overall, I liked the book. There's some stuff that I really didn't like about it. Like, I already mentioned, like, Ellen getting her mind wiped at the end, I thought was extremely stupid.
Sure.
And like, honestly, having read the book, where unlike with the audio drama, where Ellen is like the main character of the book, like, honestly, I don't think she really needed to be in the book, like, at all. Like, even though she's one of the main characters, I still don't really think she really does much other than just be another person there that's running around,
Sure. It could have been a different rogue AI. It didn't have to be Ash. It could have been, I don't know, fucking Cynthia from Fireteam Elite, right?
Like, it could have been an AI that was on the Marion that was going insane because the Marion was breaking down. Like, it didn't need to be Ash.
And and the Marion's a Weyland-Yutani operation. It could have just been their mother got Special Order 937 or whatever they wanted to call it. Order 939, who knows at this point? Could have been Order 938. Could have been between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, who
Um,
fucking knows? The one though, yeah, like I said, I didn't really think Ellen needed to be in this book at the end of the day.
right.
And I really hated the ending of her with her in the Medpod and how all that gets resolved. But
Yeah, I
one
don't
thing
blame you.
two things I really liked about this book
Uh-huh.
is one of them, even though I could give or take the fact that Ellen is here at all, Tim Lebbon wrote her really well, and I
Sure.
thought she felt just like the character from the movie.
Yeah.
I personally thought he was really able to accurately channel the way that character talks and acts and thinks.
She got a
Um
few moments of that in this, like when, I mean, her interactions with people felt very Ellen to me.
yeah.
And then, of course, when she's like, we have to blow up this colony. That's more important, even if we blow up this ancient relic spaceship.
Yeah.
And then when she was like very stern about, we can't do anything to save Sneddon. Sneddon's already dead. We have to be prepared for that. Just it was all very Ellen. And none of it felt,
Yeah,
it didn't feel, that's the thing. Like, she doesn't have a cruelty to her.
Yeah.
It's just very, I mean, until you get to Alien Resurrection, but she's not a cruel person. It did feel like the character, and she got a few of those Ripley moments.
I could give or take whether she's here at all, but since she is, I thought they did a really good job of portraying her.
Yes.
I also, like you mentioned, I just think the existence of the Drew Coffey is just cool.
Yeah.
They don't really do much, but just like having around makes me go, oh yeah, that's neat. But like the other thing in this book that I absolutely fucking loved is every single action scene where they're getting attacked by a xenomorph is phenomenal. They're all great. I love all of them.
I think they're portrayed well with audio, with sound design and stuff in the audio drama too. You get a couple of things where it's somebody telling you what they're doing because they can't show you and there's no narrator, you know?
Yeah.
And that bugs a lot of people. That bugs some people for sure. It doesn't bug me so much. So, but there's a couple. I mean,
what else are they going to do? You know, how else are they going to handle that?
Yeah.
But like one thing I really liked about the action scenes in this book, that is something I always pay attention to every time I'm reading like a novel that's like an action or a horror novel or whatever, is I always pay attention during like the action or fight scenes of how well the like spatial geometry of where the characters are is described.
Interesting.
And it's really easy to get confused because like if you say, oh, a character, you know, runs to the other side of the room, but like the narration doesn't say like what side of the room they ran to, that might cause like a minor error in later on in the scene if they do something, but you're like, wait, no, they're supposed to be on the other side of the room, or like that kind of thing.
Sure.
Like, so I always pay attention to like where the characters are, where they go, where everyone is at any time to like picture it in my head.
Okay.
And this, like, Tim Lebbon does a phenomenal, just a fantastic job of making where everyone is positioned and making the action like understandable and easy to follow along with. Good. Like I was always able to picture what was going on, who was what was happening with and to who every single time. It was like all the action scenes were just written really well, and like the actual stuff that happens in them, like, you know, people get fucking violently decompressed, somebody gets ripped in half, like the stuff that's happening is also stuff I really like, but just the way it was written, it was really easy for me to follow along and like keep engaged and know where everyone is and be able to picture it in my head as if it was a movie. I could see it, you know, because it was just described really well.
I will say something with the audio drama is it was hard for me to understand the spaces that they were in, right? Yeah. Like I couldn't nail down the geography or the layout of anything like that, you know. It was just, I think that's something probably, I think that they conveyed the action well in terms of, again, sound design and energy and stuff like that. You could tell what was going on because you're hearing it, right? It is ultimately like you're listening to an action scene, which is different than reading it or watching it. So
it sure is.
Yeah, but I think it was still effective and it still worked overall.
I will say how you said you had a problem keeping in mind like the geography and how everything was arranged and stuff. here's a little preview of when we cover River of Pain. I have a real hard problem, like a real hard time keeping track of where everyone is in that book,
Sure.
because like half of the book is them just going through nondescript tunnel after nondescript tunnel over and over and over again for pages at a time. And after a while, I'm like, I truly have no idea where anyone is, so I'm just gonna roll with it.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta, you know.
But yeah, I thought Tim Lebbon did a really good job of like keeping track of where everyone is in a scene and making it really easy for me to follow along with and like understand what's happening. Because like that scene where they open up the Samson and like, you know, with the 4 xenomorphs and one of them escapes and everything, like if he hadn't written that quite as well, I would have no fucking idea what happened, because there is a lot going on in that scene and it is very chaotic and a lot of stuff happens really fast. But I did not have problems. I did not have any trouble at all like keeping up with what was going on while the events of the scene were happening.
Gotcha. Have you read any of like the R.A. Salvatore like Drizzt novels?
I have not. I don't like, I play D&D like a lot, but I don't go in for the like prefabricated like fiction and world building and stuff. I don't go in for that stuff. I just play D&D because I like playing the game. I don't really care about the lore around it, you know.
I fucked around with a couple of those Drizzt novels, and that dude, when he writes fight scenes, he gets so specific about like hand position and angle of swing and all that kind of stuff. And like you can follow it, but it's also like you're reading a textbook of a fight. Like it's not, people love it. I'm not talking shit. Like people love the Drizzt novels. I'm not here to rain on anybody's parade. I went through 2 or 3 of them, I think, but like fight scenes in that would last for pages because of the way he would describe them. And certainly people have praised him for the way he conveys action. So like it's effective and it works, but but this isn't like that. It's not that specific. Like,
no, it's not.
He turned and with his left hand cocked the bolt caster or whatever as a xenomorph swung in on his left flank, and he ducked and turned, you know, and you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not anything that precise. No,
it's just fluid.
Yeah, he just has a really good sense of being able to effectively keep in mind where everyone is at any time, and he's just able to convey that well while writing. So that's like the other thing about this book that I really liked a lot is all the action scenes are great.
Like I wish I could remember. I think I have an idea of what you're talking about, because I did read his Predator novel a long time ago. Like, I think right after I listened to this, I got his Predator book, and I remember really enjoying it also, but I don't remember details about it. So I'll take your word for it that he is a good writer. I want to give a shout out here to the voice cast of the audio drama.
All right.
Because I think that they were all pretty damn good. So the thing was directed by Dirk Maggs, for starters, and he does a lot of this audio drama. He directed the other ones as well, the other Alien ones, including I think the audio drama for Gibson's Alien 3.
Okay.
So I'm just going to read a cast list here. Hooper was voiced by Corey Johnson. Baxter by Matthew Lewis. Snedden by Karen Drisdale. LaChance by Mac McDonald. Kazianov by Andrea Deck. Welford by Nathan Osgood. Powell by Abdul Salis. Garcia by Regina Brandolino. Jordan by Barbara Barnes. Vic by Tom Alexander, who also voiced the computers, like the Marion computer announcements. Ripley by Laurel Lefkow, who is doing a phenomenal Sigourney Weaver impression.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Really embodies, like, sounds like the character, the mannerisms and everything. I just want that on record. And finally, Ash, played by Rutger Hauer. Interesting bit of trivia, as I told you, as the Marion is collapsing into the atmosphere and Hooper and Ripley are both safe from it, and Ash is stranded on the ship by himself, on the Marion by himself. As he's like recording his last message, he says, "I wonder, will I dream?" And I was like, of course, it's Rutger Hauer. Of course they're going to like do a little Blade Runner nod, aren't they?
That's funny to me.
That wasn't in the book, was it? Like, that was definitely...
It was. Well, no, because remember, in the book, by that point, Ash had already died.
Right.
So
he's like, "I wonder, will I dream?" And I'm like, I see what you did there. Dirk Maggs and whoever else adapted this thing. I
Um,
want that to be like a Rutger Hauer like ad lib.
it probably was, and they were like, gotta keep it in.
Yeah.
While you are on that, I should just point out that the audiobook was narrated by Jeff Harding.
Okay. Nice.
And since it wasn't a drama, he's the only person. So
How'd he do? I think they tend to get pretty good narrators for all these alien books.
Yeah. I mean, I liked it. I believe he did the audiobook for all 3 novels in this trilogy.
Okay.
And I liked him. There was a couple of words throughout the course of the book that he pronounced in I don't want to say a weird way, but just he pronounced it slightly differently than how I would have. And
Sure.
so I was just like, oh, that's an interesting way to say that word. But now, since it's been like a week or whatever, I don't remember what any of those examples are. But there were a couple of moments that he had, like I said, I wouldn't call it weird. It's just he pronounced something differently than I did. And I was like, huh, okay. Otherwise he did a good job. I liked it a lot. I didn't think his voice was like annoying or too high or low pitched or whatever. Like I thought it worked for the story. So
good. We love it when there's a good narration.
He gives LaChance, of course, a French accent. He gives Baxter a Southern accent.
Okay.
And
that tracks.
Garcia has a little bit of a Spanish accent, I think, but she doesn't really talk that much. But of course, Kasyanov has like a noticeable, she sounds like Natasha from Rocky and Bullwinkle Russian accent.
Of course. I don't even think they did that in the audio drama. She didn't have an accent at all, which was
it was fun. I liked it.
Idea.
And like it was one of those things where, because like, since it's just this one guy's voice over and over and over again for 9.5 hours, it's a good way to like break it up a little and like make the sound going into my ear register differently. Yeah. So I enjoyed the accents. I had fun with it.
Good. I'm glad. Kenny, I think we should wrap it up here.
Yeah, I don't think I really have anything else, so I think I'm good to wrap it up.
Overall, I'd say the audio drama is a very enjoyable, fun experience to get a little bit more alien action, because the one thing you don't think about is how iconic a lot of the sounds are.
Yeah.
When you're reading these books, but like they nailed the sounds, right? They nailed the way the Xenos sound and everything. I think they even borrowed sound effects from Alien Isolation. I believe I read that. So like they've got the sound design on point. Mm-hmm. I think the characterizations are good. Like I said, I think the cast was good. I recommend the audio drama, whether you've read the book or not. I mean, there's enough different, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of 2 different versions of the same story. And like you, I also recommend just taking in this story in general, regardless of what version you decide to go with.
Yeah.
They're all pretty much the same thing, and you'll get the same basic story every time, because like it sounds to me that other than like cutting out some narration and stuff, it sounds to me like it's probably about 80% or so of the same book.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what version you take, you'll get the same story of the Marion and the Samson and the mines, no matter which one you go with. So
yes. Kenny, have we decided what we're doing next episode?
I don't think so.
I think so. Crew, next week might be a little bit of a question marks in terms of an episode, because I am most likely getting hit with a hurricane in a couple of days from this recording, and I just don't know how that might mess things up in terms of scheduling and editing and recording and all of that kind of stuff. So I hope you can have a little bit of patience and bear with us if things go funny. Hopefully they won't, but we'll see. Better safe than sorry, right?
That's right.
But I think, Kenny, we're getting close to jumping into aliens territory.
Yeah, I think it's about time for aliens. Like, there's the only other stuff that we could do is like, well, if we still want to consider Newt's Tale canon, which I don't know if it is anymore, we could do that. We could do, as we were discussing earlier, River of Pain, because that takes place right before the movie. But
I'm thinking maybe we should jump into Newt's Tale next. I understand it's not canon, but we haven't really dug into any of those classic Dark Horse comics yet. And
yeah, we really haven't, have we?
Definitely want to talk about the Mark Verheiden Aliens sequel comic book.
Okay,
that launched the entire sort of the entire Dark Horse Aliens universe back in the day.
Like 87 or whatever.
Yeah, and Newt's Tale fits into that in continuity, even though obviously it published after those books. So I think maybe that should be our next major stop.
Okay.
I'm going to say stay tuned to our Twitter and Instagram accounts at Crew Expendable Pod on Instagram and at Crew Expendapod on Twitter, because I'm thinking I'll put together some kind of a schedule or a planned list of what we're going to cover so people can start following along if they want to.
Nice. Hell yeah.
So check us out on those social medias. And Kenny, where can people find you? Because you'll retweet those things.
I certainly will try to remember to. I'll be able to do that on my Twitter account, which is at CYHOBBEZ. Normally, I would say that I use it to, basically just tweet about what I've been playing or what I've been watching or lately. But like, I haven't actually made a tweet in a couple of weeks. My last tweet about something I was playing was when I was talking about the Mad Max game.
Nice.
But I've since finished that and beaten it and had a great time and have moved on to I don't know what else quite yet. I'm still, like we were talking about earlier, playing Fire Team Elite. But I don't know if I'm going to keep doing that until I'm done with it. I might toss in some other game. I don't know. We'll find out. Follow me on Twitter to find out more for sure.
Yeah. And follow me on Twitter at Final Neal and Instagram at Final Neal Retro. And I'll be playing Fire Team Elite. Follow me on Xbox at Final Neal. Fuck it. Why not?
I'm on PSN at the same thing that I am on at Twitter. So.
And our website, crewexpendable.net. You can subscribe to the show and all the places there. Also, just take that URL and text it to everybody you know.
That's right.
Let's drum up some support. Let's drum up some listeners. Listen to us on Goodpods. Leave us good reviews, 5 stars and up, thumbs up, whatever you can do on your platform of choice. Get us some Spotify reviews, some Apple Podcast reviews. It really helps the show. And we will hopefully be back next week to probably start talking about aliens-related stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, stay frosty.